The first thing I noticed wasn't the voices, it was the smell. Burnt rosemary. Sharp, bitter, clinging to the air like it had nowhere else to go. I sat at the table, my fingertips tracing the grooves in the wood, and wondered if Cassandra had done it on purpose. She hated the roast I made, the one Daniel used to beg for when he was a boy. The clink of silverware cut through the silence, too loud in a room that big. Cassandra sat across from me, her smile painted on, her diamond earrings catching the light every time she moved her head. Daniel, bless him, was talking about something work-related, his eyes darting between us like he could will the tension into disappearing. Then her hand landed on my arm, light at first, almost like she was going to ask me to pass the salt. "Evelyn," she said sweetly, "you've been awfully quiet tonight. Is it because you finally realized you don't belong here?" Daniel's fork froze halfway to his mouth. I tried to laugh it off, my lips twitching with the effort, but she leaned in closer, her perfume, something expensive and suffocating, making my throat tighten. "Maybe," she added, her voice dropping so low only I could hear, "you should stop pretending Daniel still needs you." Before I could answer, she stood abruptly, her chair scraping back across the floor. And then it happened. The slap was fast, hot against my cheek, the sound ringing out like a gunshot in the dining room. My wineglass toppled, spilling deep red across the white tablecloth, the stain spreading like a wound. Daniel shot to his feet, shouting her name, but she didn't look at him. She looked at me, daring me to do something. I could hear my own breath, sharp and uneven, over the hum of the fridge. I stayed seated, my hands curling into the fabric of my skirt. "What is wrong with you?" Daniel barked at her, but his voice already carried the edge of defeat. I could feel every eye in that room, their friends, her sister, pretending not to watch but leaning in all the same. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just smiled, slow and deliberate. I said softly, "you've made your first mistake tonight." Her smile faltered, just a flicker, but I caught it, and I held on to it. Before I could say more, the front door opened. A shadow filled the doorway, tall, soaked from the rain outside, and familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. I hadn't seen him in years. He stepped inside, his boots leaving dark marks on the polished floor. And the moment his eyes landed on me, Cassandra's grip on Daniel's arm tightened like a vice. The room shifted when he stepped in, like the air had been knocked sideways. The rain still clung to his coat, droplets sliding off and pattering onto the floor. His eyes, those same steel-grey eyes I remembered from another life, locked on me first, then flicked to Cassandra, lingering just long enough to make her swallow hard. No one spoke. The only sound was the rain pounding against the roof and the steady drip-drip from his coat. Daniel's face drained of colour. "Uncle Mark?" he said, voice breaking just slightly. What are you doing here?" "Uncle." That wasn't the word I would have chosen for him. Not after what happened. Mark didn't answer right away. He took a step forward, the wooden floor groaning under his weight. His presence was like a cold draft cutting through the room, threading under skin. Cassandra's hand slipped from Daniel's arm. She was trying to keep her composure, but I caught the twitch in her jaw, the way her eyes darted to the door like she was calculating the distance. "I got your message," Mark said finally, his voice low, carrying the weight of something unfinished. I sat still, watching her. Cassandra blinked, feigning confusion. "My message?" Mark's gaze didn't waver. "Don't play games with me. You said it was urgent. You said Evelyn was in trouble." I could feel every eye swing toward me. My chest tightened, not from fear but from the knowledge that this was about to get messy in a way no one at that table could have predicted. "I didn't send—" Cassandra began, but Mark cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Save it." He turned back to me. "Are you?" The question was simple, but the room seemed to shrink around it. I met his eyes. "Not yet," I said. "But give her time." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but there was nothing warm about it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope, thick and worn at the edges. Cassandra's eyes tracked it like prey watching the hunter's hand. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said, sliding it across the table toward me. The envelope stopped just short of my fingers. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I let my hand rest on it, feeling the faint ridges of whatever was inside. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "From the same place she's been getting hers," he replied, his eyes still on Cassandra. Her breathing quickened, almost imperceptibly, but I noticed. Everyone noticed. The silence cracked when Daniel finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Cassandra, what's in there?" She didn't answer. She pushed back from the table so suddenly her chair tipped over with a sharp crash. "I'm not doing this here," she snapped, grabbing her bag. Mark's hand shot out, catching her wrist before she could move. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. I watched her freeze, every muscle locked. The tension was suffocating, wrapping around the room like plastic film. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, came the sound of glass shattering. Not here, I thought. Not tonight. But my gut already knew. Whatever was in that envelope had just started to walk in through the back door. Daniel moved first, shoving past Mark and nearly tripping over the fallen chair as he hurried toward the sound. Cassandra stayed rooted, her eyes darting between the back hallway and the envelope still under my hand. I pushed it closer to me, slow and deliberate, never breaking her gaze. The rain outside hammered harder against the windows, its rhythm syncopated with the faint drip from Mark's coat still hanging open. "Stay here," Mark muttered, following Daniel toward the kitchen. I didn't move. Cassandra's knuckles whitened around the strap of her bag, like she was bracing for something no one else could see coming. The next sound was worse than the glass, a low metallic creak, like a door hinge that hadn't moved in years. Then a voice, low, male, and far too close to the back of the house. "Cassandra!" My skin prickled. She went rigid, her head jerking toward the hallway. That was all the confirmation I needed. She knew exactly who it was. Footsteps approached, slow and measured, the kind that meant whoever it was wasn't in a rush. Daniel reappeared first, his expression tight. "The back door's open," he said, but before he could say more, a man stepped into the dining room. He was drenched, hair plastered to his forehead, a small shard of glass clinging to his coat sleeve. And in his right hand, dangling like an afterthought, was a set of keys. Not just any keys, the kind the bank gives you when you sign for a safety deposit box. Cassandra's lips parted, but no sound came out. Mark positioned himself between the man and me, his posture deceptively relaxed. "You're late," Mark said. The man gave a humorless smile. "Traffic." He set the keys on the table right beside the envelope. The two objects looked harmless enough, but my pulse was drumming now, the air thick with unspoken history. "Is someone going to explain?" Daniel said, his voice tight. "Why a stranger just walked into my house with whatever this is?" "Not a stranger," Cassandra whispered, so softly it was almost lost under the rain. The man looked at her like she'd just betrayed him by speaking. Then his gaze flicked to me. "You're Evelyn," he said, not a question. "And you're about to have a very interesting night." The rain hit harder, a sudden gust rattling the window pane. Somewhere inside me, the dread solidified into something sharper. Because I realized in that moment, between the keys, the envelope, and Cassandra's expression, whatever this was, it had started long before tonight, and it was about to crash into all of us. The man didn't sit. He stayed standing at the head of the table, dripping rainwater onto the rug Cassandra had probably bragged about buying from Italy. His eyes kept darting between the envelope under my hand and the keys resting beside it, like he was watching two snakes coiled and ready to strike. Daniel stepped closer to him, his shoulders squared, his jaw tight. "You're going to explain yourself," he said. or you're going to leave." The man didn't blink. "I'm not here for you." He reached out, slow and deliberate, and slid the keys toward me. "These," he said, "are yours." I didn't move. My fingertips pressed harder into the envelope, the cardboard warm under my skin from where I'd been holding it. "And why?" I asked. "Would I trust anything you're handing me?" He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because they open something Cassandra never wanted you to see." That made her snap. "Enough!" she barked, her voice cutting through the air. This circus needs to stop. Daniel, make them leave." But Daniel didn't move. He was staring at her now, like the edges of a puzzle he'd been ignoring were finally starting to click together. "What's in the box, Cassandra?" he asked. Her face flushed crimson. "There is no box." "Then why?" Mark said quietly from behind her. "Do I have a photograph of you opening it last month?" The room froze. Cassandra turned to him, her mouth working soundlessly for a moment before she found her voice. "You've been following me." "No," Mark said. "I've been following the money." The man at the head of the table reached into his coat and pulled out a small sealed plastic bag. Inside was a single Polaroid, grainy, but clear enough to see Cassandra's face as she leaned over a safety deposit box, something folded in her hands. She tried to lunge for it, but Mark caught her by the arm, steady but unyielding. "Sit," he told her. She didn't. Instead, she yanked herself free and moved toward the hallway. Daniel blocked her path. His voice was calm, but the calm that comes just before a door slams. "If you leave right now, Cassandra, I will follow you. And if I follow you, I'll find the truth myself." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof in relentless waves. The man with the keys finally sat down, resting his elbows on the table. "You're all thinking too small," he said. "It's not about what's in the box. It's about what happens when Evelyn opens it." My pulse quickened. I looked at the envelope, then at the keys. For the first time tonight, I wondered if opening either one might set something in motion I couldn't stop. Before I could decide, a flash of lightning lit up the windows, and in that momentary glare, I saw it. A figure standing in the garden, perfectly still, watching us. The lightning faded, and for a second I thought I'd imagined it. But then the next flash came, quick and jagged across the sky, and the figure was still there, motionless, rain streaming off the brim of a hood. My chest tightened. Cassandra saw it too, her hand shot to her mouth, her eyes wide in a way that told me this wasn't a stranger to her. Mark was already moving toward the sliding glass door, his steps fast but silent. The man with the keys didn't flinch, just leaned back like he'd been expecting this. "Don't," Cassandra said suddenly, her voice breaking. "Mark, don't open it." Daniel spun toward her, the edge in his voice sharper now. "Who is that?" But she didn't answer. She couldn't seem to tear her eyes from the garden. Mark ignored her and yanked the door open. The wind slapped the curtains sideways, cold rain spilling in and soaking the floor instantly. But the garden was empty. The figure had vanished. Mark stepped out into the rain, scanning the darkness, his coat plastered to him in seconds. I couldn't see past the hedge line. The storm had turned everything into a blur of silver and shadow. Then, just barely audible over the rain, I heard it. The sound of a car door slamming shut. Tires splashing through water. Gone. Mark came back in, his face unreadable. "Who was it?" I asked. He didn't look at me when he answered. "Someone making sure the box is still closed." Cassandra's face drained of what little colour it had left. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice shaking. "If she's here, it's already too late." The man with the keys smiled faintly, and I hated that it wasn't a kind smile. It was knowing, cruel almost. "She," he repeated, rolling the word in his mouth like it tasted familiar. "So you finally admit you're not working alone." Daniel turned on her. "Cassandra, start talking." She backed up a step, her hands up like we were all closing in on her. "If I tell you," she said, "you'll wish you never knew." I'd had enough. I slid the envelope toward me and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded twice. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The handwriting hit me first. Old-fashioned cursive, black ink pressed deep into the paper. 4 lines. That was it. But they changed everything. Daniel leaned over to read, and I felt him stiffen beside me. Cassandra made a sound, small and guttural, like air being forced from her lungs. Mark's voice was low, almost reverent. "So it's true." And then, another sound. This one not from the storm, but from upstairs. A slow, deliberate set of footsteps heading toward us. The footsteps weren't hurried. They had a weight to them, a rhythm that made every beat feel intentional. Heel, toe, pause. Heel, toe, pause. The sound echoed down the stairwell, mingling with the rain's relentless drumming on the roof. Everyone froze. Even the man with the keys, who'd been lounging like this was all a game, straightened in his seat. Mark's hand drifted toward the inside of his coat. Cassandra's eyes darted wildly, not at the stairs but at me, like she was silently begging me to do something. Daniel broke first. "Who's upstairs?" he demanded, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. No answer, just another slow step. Then a shadow appeared on the wall where the staircase turned, tall and lean, distorted by the flickering chandelier light. My fingers tightened around the paper from the envelope, its edges crumpling. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the figure came into view. She couldn't have been more than 30, dark hair slick from rain, a long grey coat buttoned to her throat. Her face was calm, unnervingly calm, and when her eyes landed on me, I felt something cold slide down my spine. "Evelyn," she said, her voice smooth and deliberate. "We need to talk." Cassandra made a choking sound. "No. You said you'd never come here." The woman didn't look at her. "I said I'd never come unless you forced my hand." She stepped off the last stair, water pooling beneath her boots. Mark moved to intercept, but she simply glanced at him and said, "If you want the box open, you'll let me finish." That stopped him in his tracks. She turned to me again. "You've read the note. You know it's real. But you don't know why it matters yet." My heart pounded in my ears. "Then tell me." She smiled faintly. "Not here." Her gaze flicked toward the window, to the sheets of rain blurring the outside world. "By morning, this house will be empty. You'll understand then." And without warning, she reached into her coat and placed something small and heavy on the table. A brass key, old and tarnished, but with the same insignia stamped into it as the ones already in front of me. It clinked softly against the wood, the sound impossibly loud in the tense silence. Cassandra's face crumpled like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. "Evelyn," the woman said softly, "when they're packing in the rain tomorrow, you'll have a choice to make. I hope you're ready to choose." Then she turned and walked back toward the stairs, but halfway up she stopped. Without looking back, she said, "And don't bother locking the doors tonight. It won't matter." The last sound we heard was her steady footsteps retreating to the upper floor, leaving all of us staring at the key between us like it was the fuse to something about to explode. No one touched the brass key. It sat there between the envelope and the newer set of keys, the rain's muffled roar outside making the small dining room feel like a sealed chamber. My eyes kept drifting to it, the tarnished metal catching the chandelier light in a way that made the insignia gleam. It was the same symbol I'd seen once before, years ago, on a letter Daniel's father had hidden at the back of his desk. But that letter had vanished the night he died. Mark broke the silence first. "We can't stay here." His voice was clipped, decisive, the voice of a man who'd already started counting exits in his head. Daniel bristled. "This is my house." Mark looked at him like he was a child arguing over a toy in the middle of a fire. "Not for long, if she's right." Cassandra finally found her voice. "She's bluffing. This is all to scare Evelyn." I leaned forward. "Then why do you look like you've already lost?" Her jaw tightened. But she didn't answer. Instead, her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, as if she could hear the woman upstairs moving, even though the floor above us was silent. The man with the keys drummed his fingers once against the table, then leaned forward. "If you're going to open the box, you'll need all 3 keys now. That one," he nodded toward the brass, "is the oldest. Without it, the others are useless." I looked at Mark. "You said you've been following the money. Does this box have anything to do with it?" He hesitated, which told me everything before he spoke. "More than you want to know tonight." "Try me." "It doesn't just hold documents," he said finally. "It holds leverage, enough to ruin the right person or save the wrong one." The lights flickered once, twice before steadying. I felt the shift in the air before I heard it. Footsteps again, but this time they weren't upstairs. They were outside, slow and deliberate, squelching in the rain-soaked grass. Everyone turned toward the window. A figure passed by, close enough that the shape of their shoulder brushed against the wet glass. Then another. 2 people. Then 3. Moving in a slow circle around the house. My pulse spiked. "Who are they?" Daniel demanded. The man with the keys smiled without humor. "The ones who don't knock." Cassandra's hand shot out and grabbed mine. Not out of kindness, but like she thought I might bolt. "Evelyn, whatever happens, you cannot give them the box." The lights flickered again, longer this time, shadows stretching across all our faces. And then, in the brief darkness before they steadied, I heard it. 3 slow knocks from the front door. Not loud, not hurried, just patient, waiting. The knocks didn't come again. They didn't need to. Their echo seemed to crawl through the walls, curling into the spaces between our breaths. No one moved at first, not even Daniel, whose jaw was tight enough to crack. The rain was a constant backdrop now, steady and heavy, a curtain between us and whatever stood outside. Mark was the first to break the stillness. He stood, his chair scraping back across the rug, and walked toward the foyer with the kind of deliberate calm that made my stomach knot. The man with the keys didn't follow, but his gaze tracked Mark like he was watching a move on a chessboard he'd already played 100 times. Cassandra leaned toward me, her voice a thin thread. "Don't open it, no matter what he says." "What's on the other side of that door, Cassandra?" I asked, but her eyes just darted away to the ceiling, the floor, anywhere but me. Mark reached the door, rested his hand on the knob, and glanced back at us. "If this goes wrong, you have 2 minutes to get out." Then he pulled it open. A blast of cold, wet air rushed in, carrying with it the smell of rain-soaked asphalt and something else, something metallic. Standing in the doorway were 3 people, hoods up, their faces obscured by shadows. None of them spoke. The one in front stepped forward just enough for the light to catch the glint of a silver chain around their neck. From it dangled a small key, identical to the tarnished brass one on our table, only newer, sharper, like it had never been touched by time. "We've come for what's ours," the figure said, voice calm but edged with authority. Mark didn't flinch. "Then you've come too late." Behind me, the man with the keys laughed under his breath, a sound with no humour at all. "Careful, Mark. They're not here to negotiate." The figure's gaze shifted past Mark, landing directly on me. Even with the distance between us, I could feel the weight of it. "Evelyn," they said, and the sound of my name was like a match to dry kindling. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Cassandra's chair legs scraped back suddenly, the noise sharp in the tense air. "Don't talk to her," she snapped, her voice cracking. "You deal with me." "We already did," the figure replied. "That's why we're here." Another flash of lightning lit up the scene, revealing their faces for a split second, calm, focused, and all looking at me. And in that instant, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I had seen one of them before. Not in this house, not even in this town, but years ago, in a bank lobby, standing just far enough away to pretend they weren't watching me. I didn't know their name then. I still didn't. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was in that box, they had been waiting a very long time to get it, and they weren't leaving without it. Mark didn't close the door. He stood planted in the frame, the rain soaking his shoulders, a silent barrier between us and them. The man in front, silver chain, polished key, didn't move either. He just stood there, rain sliding down the curve of his hood, his stillness more unnerving than any sudden threat. The other two shifted slightly, one to the left, one to the right, like they were taking the measure of the house, mapping exits in their heads. Daniel's hand brushed mine under the table, not for comfort, but to signal stay put. His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, toward the back door. Mark caught the movement without even turning his head. "Don't," he said sharply. "They'll have someone back there." The figure at the door took a slow step forward, the chain swaying. "We don't have to make this messy, Evelyn. The box isn't yours, and you know it." "I don't know anything," I said evenly, though my grip on the envelope had tightened so much the paper inside was bending. The man with the keys leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "They're not lying. It was never meant for you." He said it like he was enjoying watching the ground shift under my feet. Cassandra slammed her palm against the table. "Enough! This isn't her fight." The leader's gaze shifted to her, and something passed across his face. Familiarity, recognition, and then a faint curl of contempt. "It was never yours either." Mark's voice cut through the tension. "You've had your warning. Leave now, or I'll make you leave." The one on the right laughed softly, a sound like gravel in water. "You think you can stop us?" Mark didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and placed something on the narrow table beside the door, a black rectangular device with a single red button. His finger hovered above it. "If I press this," he said, "you won't get 10 feet before you're wishing you stayed in the rain." For the first time, the leader hesitated. The other two stilled completely. That pause told me whatever was in that device wasn't a bluff. But it also told me they weren't afraid enough to leave empty-handed. 2 minutes, the leader said finally, stepping back into the rain. "Then we come in." Mark slammed the door shut and turned the lock, though we all knew it wouldn't matter. His eyes landed on me. "Upstairs now." "Why upstairs?" Daniel demanded. Mark didn't even look at him. "Because that's where the choice will have to be made." The man with the keys smiled like he'd just been waiting for this part. "She's going to see it." Cassandra's voice broke. "If she sees it, it's over." Mark motioned toward the stairs again, more urgent now. The rain was pounding harder, each drop like a warning against the glass. And then, just as I stood, something slipped under the front door, a folded piece of wet paper. Mark bent, picked it up, and read the single line aloud. "We already have the third key." Mark's jaw tightened as he read the words, the wet paper trembling just slightly between his fingers. "That's impossible," he muttered, more to himself than to us. But his eyes betrayed him. He knew it wasn't. Cassandra's face went slack, all the heat drained from her voice. "If they have the third key, then nothing is stopping them." The man with the keys finished for her, leaning back in his chair like this was the moment he'd been waiting for all night. The brass key on the table suddenly felt heavier, like it was pulling the air toward it. Mark crumpled the paper and stuffed it into his pocket. "Upstairs. Now. No more arguing." The urgency in his voice sent a jolt through me. I grabbed the envelope and the brass key without thinking. Daniel followed close behind as we moved toward the stairs. Cassandra hesitated, glancing toward the front door as if weighing the odds of slipping out. "Don't even think about it," Mark warned over his shoulder. The lights flickered again, this time holding a heartbeat longer before steadying. I felt it then, a low vibration beneath my feet, faint but growing. "They're not waiting 2 minutes," I said. Mark didn't reply. We reached the landing, and he led us down a narrow hallway I didn't remember from before. It ended in a heavy door with an iron latch, the kind you'd expect in an old bank vault, not a family home. "What is this?" I asked. The only room in the house they can't reach without tearing it apart, Mark said. He pulled a ring of keys from his coat, found the right one, and slid it into the lock. It turned with a deep, reluctant click. The door swung inward, revealing a room far smaller than I expected. Bare walls, a single table in the centre, and on it, a black metal box no bigger than a suitcase. 3 keyholes, each a different shape, lined the front. I felt my throat tighten. That's it, Mark said. And you're the one who decides whether it opens tonight. Cassandra stepped inside, her movements tense, as if the floor itself might betray her. Evelyn, you can't. She can, the man with the keys interrupted from the doorway. I hadn't even heard him follow us up. He was smiling again, and now it was clear. He wanted me to turn those keys. You've already been dragged into this. Might as well finish it. The vibration underfoot grew stronger, a faint metallic rattle in the walls. Mark's eyes darted toward the window. They're trying to force the lock on the front door, he said. We don't have much time. I looked at the box, at the brass key in my palm, at the other 2 keys resting on the table. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. Daniel stepped up beside me. Mum, whatever's in there, are you sure you want to know? Before I could answer, the vibration stopped. The house went silent. And then, 3 deafening bangs against the vault door, followed by a voice, low and certain. Open it, or we will. The bangs echoed through the narrow hallway, each one vibrating in my chest. The voice on the other side was calm, almost patient, and that patience was worse than rage. It meant they were sure we'd give in. Mark stepped between me and the door, his stance solid, his hand inside his coat again. They can't breach this door without explosives, he said, but there was a thin thread in his tone I hadn't heard before. Doubt. The man with the keys moved closer to the table, his gaze locked on the black box. You can end this now, Evelyn. 3 turns and all of this. He gestured toward the pounding at the door. Goes away. Cassandra let out a sharp laugh, bitter and cracked. Goes away. You open that box, and none of us will be breathing by morning. My grip on the brass key tightened, the cold metal biting into my skin. I could feel every gaze in the room on me, Mark's urgent, Daniel's conflicted, Cassandra's desperate, and the man with the keys, hungry. The pounding stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low. Mom, maybe don't make any move until we know what's in there. That's the point, Mark said. We can't know without opening it, and if we wait, they'll find a way in. A single, deliberate knock came from the other side of the door, so soft it was almost a courtesy. Then the leader's voice. Evelyn, I'll give you 30 seconds. Turn the keys and you keep control. Refuse and we take it from you. One way or another. My pulse hammered. I moved to the table, my fingers brushing over the other 2 keys, sleek silver, matte black, each fitting perfectly into the box's waiting locks. If I do this, I said quietly, I decide who sees what's inside. The man with the keys smiled, and something in me didn't trust that smile. Of course, he said smoothly. Cassandra's breath hitched. Evelyn, he's lying. 20 seconds. I slid the brass key into its slot. It fit too perfectly, like it had been waiting for me alone. The box seemed to hum under my hands. 10 seconds. Daniel's hand landed on my arm, warm and grounding. Mum, whatever happens, I'm with you. 5 seconds. Mark's voice was firm now. Do it. Cassandra's was a whisper. Don't. I turned the brass key. The sound it made was deep, mechanical, something shifting far beneath the surface. The moment it clicked into place, the vault door shuddered. Dust rained down from the ceiling. And then, just as I reached for the second key, the lights went out. Total darkness. Only the rain outside and the sound of the vault door's lock being tested, harder this time. Followed by the chilling scrape of metal against metal, someone working it from the outside. The darkness pressed in thick and absolute, swallowing the narrow room and every familiar shape. The rain was just a muted roar now, the vault's walls trapping the sound so it felt far away. Too far, like we were sealed inside something sinking. A faint click echoed from the vault door, not the pounding from before, not the brute force. This was precision, deliberate. They were picking the lock. Mark swore under his breath. "They're not supposed to have that skill set," he muttered, but I could hear the shift in his stance, the readiness in it. The man with the keys chuckled softly, the sound floating in the dark. "You still think they came here without preparation?" "Shut up," Mark snapped. My fingers found the second key, the matte black one, and hovered over its slot. In the darkness, I could feel the box almost vibrating, like it was aware the sequence had started. "If the power's cut," I whispered, "can the box still open?" "Yes," the man with the keys said immediately. "The mechanism's mechanical, not electric." Cassandra's voice slashed through the dark, sharp and urgent. "Evelyn, think. Once that box is open, you can't close it again. Whatever's inside doesn't go back in." The lock at the door clicked again, faster now, and a faint metallic scrape told me they were almost through the first layer. Daniel's hand brushed mine in the dark. "Mum, if you're going to open it, do it before they get in, or decide now to walk away." My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. "What's inside?" I demanded, my voice louder than I meant it to be. No one answered right away. Even the lock-picking stopped for a single heartbeat. Then the woman's voice, the one from upstairs, came through the door, muffled but clear enough to slice through the air. "A truth that will unmake you." Cassandra gasped, and in that instant, I knew she wasn't shocked by the words. She was terrified of them. The lock on the vault door shifted again. They were one, maybe two moves away from being inside. My other hand found the silver key, its edges biting into my skin. 3 keys, 3 turns. I could end the waiting now. The man with the keys leaned closer in the dark, his voice a whisper only I could hear. "Open it, Evelyn, and you choose your fate. Wait, and they'll choose for you." A final loud click rang out from the vault door, the last barrier gone. And in that heartbeat before the handle turned, I pushed the second key into its slot and twisted. The box gave a low, resonant thud. Outside, the door handle began to turn. The handle turned slow, deliberate, metal grinding against metal like it resented giving way. The sound was loud in the darkness, every creak pulling the air tighter around us. My hand hovered over the third key, the silver one, its cold bite against my fingertips like it was daring me to finish what I'd started. The vault door groaned open just an inch, spilling in a blade of pale light from the hallway. The figures outside didn't rush in. They stood there, silhouettes against the dim glow blocking the rest of the light. "Step away from the box," the leader's voice said, steady, controlled. Mark moved instantly, putting himself between me and the door, his coat brushing against my arm. "She's not stepping anywhere." "Mark," the leader said, and there was something almost weary in his tone. "You can't protect her from this." Cassandra's breathing was fast now, too fast, her hand gripping the table's edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Evelyn, don't you see? If you open it now, you hand them everything." The man with the keys finally moved from the wall, his presence sliding closer until I could feel the weight of him at my side. "Or," he murmured, "you take it for yourself and leave them with nothing." The leader's gaze shifted past Mark and locked onto me. "You have no idea what that third key unlocks. It's not the box. It's what comes after." My voice felt strange in my throat, tight. "Then tell me." He stepped 1 foot into the room, the others following silently behind. Rainwater pooled beneath them, seeping into the cracks of the vault floor. "Inside that box," he said, "is the document that proves everything Cassandra has built, every claim she's made, is a fabrication. But it also proves something about you, Evelyn, Something you've been kept from your entire life. My grip on the silver key tightened until it hurt. And if I open it, then the world changes for all of us, he replied. The rain outside seemed to swell, a rolling thunder rumbling low and distant. Cassandra's voice cracked. He's lying. The only thing in that box is a death sentence for everyone in this room. Mark looked over his shoulder at me, his eyes sharp and unyielding. You've got seconds. They're either going to take it or you're going to open it. Decide. My heartbeat was a pounding drum in my ears as I slid the silver key into its slot. Every click of its ridges sliding into place sounded final. My fingers began to turn it, and then the woman from upstairs appeared in the doorway, dripping rain, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. If she turns that key now, she said, none of you will live to see morning. The silver key froze under my fingertips, its cold metal pressing into my skin like it was holding its own breath. The woman stepped fully into the vault room, her boots leaving dark, wet prints on the concrete floor. The rain clung to her coat, dripping in slow trails, and her eyes, calm but burning, moved over each of us before settling on me. Step away from the box, Evelyn. Her voice was steady, but there was a quiet urgency underneath it, the kind that came from someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. Mark tensed, his body angled toward her. You said you weren't going to interfere unless it was forced. This isn't interference, she replied. This is stopping a slaughter. Cassandra's gaze shot to her, sharp and trembling. You can't be here. The woman's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. And yet, here I am. Because you're about to repeat the same mistake you made 15 years ago. A pulse of silence went through the room, broken only by the sound of water dripping from her coat. I didn't understand, but Cassandra's face told me she did, and that whatever had happened 15 years ago, she had never wanted it spoken aloud. The leader at the door tilted his head slightly, his voice measured. You think you can frighten her into leaving the box closed? I'm not here for fear, the woman said. I'm here because she doesn't know the full cost. None of you have told her what happens when all 3 keys turn. My voice felt tight in my throat. Then tell me. Her eyes met mine, unwavering. The box doesn't just hold proof. It holds instructions. A series of steps that once seen cannot be unseen, and once acted on cannot be undone. And those steps will ignite something far bigger than what's in this house. You mean it's dangerous, Daniel said, his voice low. I mean, she said, it's a trigger. Outside, thunder rolled closer, and for a moment it sounded like the storm itself was pressing against the walls. The leader stepped forward, his hand resting on the doorframe. She's exaggerating. The only danger is in letting it rot in here while Cassandra hides behind her lies. Cassandra's hands curled into fists. If she opens it, she dies, and so will you. The man with the keys chuckled darkly. Then maybe that's the price. My heart was pounding hard enough to make my fingers tremble against the silver key. If I don't open it, I said, what happens? The woman didn't hesitate. They'll keep coming for it. Tonight, next month, next year. You'll never be free. I looked around the room. Mark's unblinking focus, Daniel's protective stance, Cassandra's desperate stillness, the leader's cold certainty, the man with the keys practically vibrating with anticipation. My choice felt like a live wire in my hands. The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. If you're going to turn it, Evelyn, do it for yourself, not for them. The storm outside hit in a sudden, violent sheet of rain against the windows, and in that crash of sound I made my decision. I twisted the silver key. The box gave a deep, final click. And in the same instant, the vault door slammed shut from the inside, sealing all of us in. The sound of the vault door sealing was final. A deep, resonant thud that seemed to pull the air out of the room. I hadn't touched it. No one had. It locked itself. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting pale light over every tense face. The box sat between us, all 3 keys now turned, its lid trembling almost imperceptibly like something inside was pushing to get out. Mark's hand went to his coat again, but this time it wasn't to protect. It was to steady himself. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "once you lift that lid, there's no going back." My breath came shallow. "We're already past that." I reached forward. The man with the keys leaned in, hungry, his shadow falling over the table. Cassandra was shaking her head, whispering, "Don't, don't, don't," under her breath, like a prayer that had already failed. The leader in the doorway didn't move. He just watched, his eyes locked on my hands. The woman from upstairs stood still, rainwater still dripping from her coat, her gaze unreadable. My fingers found the latch. It was warm. Too warm. I flipped it. The box opened with a slow, deliberate sigh of metal, the hinges groaning like they'd been waiting years to move. Inside was paper. One single folded document, yellowed at the edges, bound with a red silk ribbon. Beneath it, a small flash drive. I reached for the paper first. The ribbon came loose too easily. My eyes scanned the first lines, and the world shifted under me. Names, dates, transactions, entire fortunes moved in silence, and my name tied to an inheritance I never knew existed. An inheritance that had been funneled, laundered, hidden under Cassandra's control. But deeper in the lines was something else, something worse. The instructions the woman had warned about weren't threats. They were leverage, contacts, passwords, and a map to assets and accounts that could dismantle entire companies and governments if placed in the wrong hands. My hands. "That," the man with the keys whispered, "is the end of her." He nodded toward Cassandra, whose face had gone the colour of ash. But Cassandra wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the flash drive, her eyes wide with something beyond fear. The leader stepped forward. "Give it to me, Evelyn, and I make sure you live long enough to use that paper." The woman's voice cut through his. "Or keep it, and make sure they never get to use it at all." The choice sat heavy in my chest. Power, survival, destruction. They all tasted the same right now. I looked at Daniel. He didn't speak, but in his eyes I saw the only answer I could live with. I picked up the flash drive, walked to the small drain in the corner of the vault floor, and let it fall. It made a faint, hollow splash before disappearing. The leader's calm cracked, his jaw tightening. "You've just made yourself a target for the rest of your life." I met his stare. "Then you'd better keep running, because I'll be the one coming for you now." The woman gave the faintest smile. Mark exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Cassandra slumped into a chair, defeated. The pounding on the vault door never came. Whoever had been outside was gone. Hours later, when the storm finally passed and the vault unlatched itself, the first light of morning spilled into the house. I stepped outside, the air still wet and cool. Behind me, Cassandra was shoving clothes into bags, Daniel helping her carry them to the car. By the time the sun broke through, they were gone, packing in the rain, just like she'd been warned. I stood in the driveway, the paper folded in my coat pocket. The rain smell lingered, sharp and clean, washing the night away. But nothing, not for any of us, would ever be clean again.